Okay, Claude support for OpenClaw is officially dead. So Anthropic sent out this email in which they said they're officially ending support for Claude subscription in third-party harnesses. And the one they explicitly named is OpenClaw. Now, there is a lot of drama and rage around this topic. I am personally interested in it more from a technical standpoint, although I do have a very unpopular opinion on the topic that I'm going to share in this video. But first, here's a tweet from Boris Cherny, who said that starting tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time, Claude subscription will no longer cover usage on third-party tools like OpenClaw. So they are coming straight out and explicitly saying that you cannot use Claude subscription with OpenClaw anymore. Now, this has been their policy since February, so it's nothing new. But now they have explicitly said you can't do this. Although you still will be able to use the API key as before. Now, this is coming after Claude having some really bad day in terms of keeping up their services. And a lot of people are saying that they are exhausting the limits of Claude subscription within a very short period of time. So this specific issue says that it happened within 70 minutes, which is kind of crazy. Now, I personally have also experienced that I am going through my Claude subscription pretty quickly in the last couple of days. Now, there is definitely a correlation between these two issues. However, there are two very distinct topics that we need to cover. One is banning third-party harnesses like OpenClaw. And the second is, which I would call a pretty terrible response from Anthropic to these reports of people burning through their credits and quotas. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to just quickly go through a tweet from Boris Cherny. So he says, we have been working hard to meet the increase in demand for Claude, and our subscriptions were not built for the usage pattern of these third-party tools. Capacity is a resource we manage thoughtfully, and we are prioritizing our customers using our products and APIs. Now, from a technical standpoint, the main thing you want to focus on is this usage pattern, because this really explains the issue they are facing. But first, let's talk about how significantly Anthropic subsidized their Claude subscription in comparison to their API. So this was reportedly coming from Cursor, that a $200 per month subscription would give you $2,000 in compute capacity last year. Now, this has potentially or allegedly increased to $5,000. So if you were to fully use your $200 monthly subscription from Claude Code, you could potentially use up to $5,000 in API calls. Now, from Anthropic's point of view, it doesn't make sense to subsidize this compute for other harnesses, which is against their terms of services. Now, as a customer, you would be thinking, I'm already paying for $200 per month, so why not I can use the thing that I paid for? Now, this is where the usage patterns comes into play when you are using a third-party harness. You see, one of the reasons that Anthropic is able to subsidize Claude Code calls is that they are able to cache incoming requests correctly on their backend. Now, for cache tokens, they don't have to use that much compute because the attention mechanism has already seen this. However, if you start using third-party harnesses, it breaks this caching mechanism. And as a result, Anthropic has to use more compute compared to if they were running through their own Claude Code harness. Which means from a technical standpoint, if you were to use the $200 per month Claude Code subscription with something like OpenClaw, Anthropic will be using a lot more compute compared to if you're using it within Claude Code. In fact, the guy, Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code, actually has a bunch of prompt cache fixes for OpenClaw that are out there on their GitHub. And some of them seems to have been already merged into OpenClaw. So it seems like Anthropic was aware of the problem and they are working with third-party harnesses to kind of address it as well. Now, I have already covered this in some of my videos, but if you're interested, I will create another more detailed video on prompt caching and how it impacts the context window that these LLMs use and how it changes how much money you have to pay. Now, as expected, people are not happy with this. There are people like saying that, why are you guys so against the biggest open source innovation ever made? In response, Boris Cherny said, we are big fans of open source. I actually just put up a few PRs to improve prompt cache efficiency for OpenClaw specifically. Now, he then goes on to say, and this is where I think we have to take our emotions out and purely from an engineering standpoint. He says this is more about engineering constraints, and I actually agree with him on this. Our systems are highly optimized for one kind of workload, and to serve as many people as possible with the most intelligent models, we are continuing to optimize that. And in this case, the workload is specifically the Claude Code harness. Now, you can still use the API key, or overusage should still work. And they are also giving people a full refund. Actually, based on the type of subscription service that you have, they're giving out the same amount in API usage. So this is really great to see much more clarity from Anthropic, whether people like it or not. But I think at least everybody knows where they stand now. Now, this brings me to the second part of the video that I want to talk about, which does not look good for Anthropic at all. And I think they really need to work on not gaslighting their customer base. A lot of people were reporting that they are hitting their usage limits pretty quickly in Claude Code, way faster than expected. Here's Lydia, who's part of the Bun team, and she recently joined Anthropic through that acquisition. They were actively investigating, and then they shared the results. And here's what she had to say about the reason, right? So peak hour limits are tighter and 1 million contact sessions got bigger. That's most of what you're feeling. We fixed a few bugs along the way, but none were overcharging you. Now, one thing, Anthropic actually gave people 2x usage capacity for a couple of weeks. So that might be one of the reasons that 2x usage is gone. That's why people are feeling it, but it gets better. Now, one of the things was that they added pops in products to help avoid large prompt cache misses. And you're going to keep hearing this prompt cache everywhere from most of these frontier model providers, because this plays a very critical role when it comes to saving on token generation cost. Okay, so here is some more. So the recommendation is to use Sonnet 4.6, which is the better default on Pro. Opus burns roughly twice as fast. And their recommendation is to switch to Opus or Sonnet 4.6 in the beginning of the session, reduce the effort level, or turn off extended thinking when you don't need to. Again, they recommend to switch at the start of the session, because that way they can preserve the prompt cache. Now, this was interesting. Start fresh instead of resuming large sessions that have been idle for more than an hour. And they recommend to just cap everything to 200,000 tokens, even though Opus now supports 1 million tokens. Now, the funny thing is that according to their documentation, the pricing does not change whether you're using 200,000 tokens or 1 million tokens. But now their recommendation is don't use beyond 200,000 tokens because it messes up with their prompt caching. Now, personally or anecdotally, I am seeing a lot faster token usage from Claude Code even before that 2x bonus usage that they enabled for 2 weeks when it comes to token pricing. All of them are subsidizing these tokens. Anthropic is probably the one that is subsidizing them the less, and hence they are the more expensive out of all the 3 major frontier labs. And I actually agree with Dex on his assessment of the situation, that whatever Anthropic is doing, this is well within their terms of services. Now, you could argue that Anthropic violated the terms of services of other people by allegedly scrapping data without their permission, but that doesn't make it valid for other people to violate their terms of services. So calling a company evil or rug pull is probably not the right way of posing it, because they never promised that they are going to support third-party harnesses. And the thing is that even if they're subsidizing, they are collecting a lot of data to help improve their next generation of the models, right? So the subsidization actually comes with a cost, irrespective of whatever service provider you are using. Now, Anthropic is not alone in this. Google also banned the use of their subscription services for third-party harnesses like OpenClaw, right? But Anthropic is probably going to get the most hate out of it. But there's another interesting pattern that is emerging that I have covered in my previous videos. We are probably towards the end of this free lunch. We're going to see substantial price increases in these different subscription services, and we're going to see a reduction in these subsidized tokens. So one example of this is Google. They recently released new AI plans. One of those is Google AI Pro, where they said that the plan features generous limits for Gemini Flash with a baseline quota included to taste test our most advanced premium models. So essentially, if you're on the Pro plan now, you can just use Gemini Flash, not Pro, right? And that's the pattern that we're going to see. Now, one company which is still sticking to providing subsidized tokens to its user is OpenAI. Now, they usually reset their usage limits whenever they see user hitting their rate limits and they are not able to fully understand. So they are probably burning money faster than anybody else on the planet at the moment. But things kind of have changed. There's a lot of goodwill around OpenAI, which is a good thing. But now, here's an interesting thing in the same tweet. I said, I also wanted to celebrate us finding a pocket of fraudulent accounts that we banned and have helped us gain some compute. The fight against the abuse never stops. It's important to mark the moment and make it a little shared victory. Now, Anthropic and Google has been saying that people abuse their subscription for other third-party harnesses, right? And that's kind of the reason of banning specific accounts. And for them, they usually mean OpenClaw type services, so not sure what exactly OpenAI is referring to. Now, one thing which Thibault highlighted is that from the surge in the demand on Codex and many other services, it is clear that AI companies are going to go through the phase of demand outpacing supply. And then two things will be most important: having the most capacity and having the most efficient models. Now, last point I want to mention is that Anthropic is definitely creating a potential competitor to OpenClaw in the form of Cowork and Claude desktop app, right? But I don't think that is the reason that they are banning OpenClaw. It probably has more to do with the actual engineering challenges and capacity, because this is an open field for any company at the moment. We're going to see which one does better. I would say arguably Opus is the best model at the moment, and anybody who is seriously considering using these models for some serious work, they are going to be willing to pay for it. Do let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.